Configuring TLS for Azure SQL Active Directory authentication is a crucial step in securing your database connections. In this guide, we will walk through the process step by step. First, it is essential to understand the key concepts involved. TLS, or Transport Layer Security, is a protocol used to encrypt data in transit. Azure SQL Active Directory authentication allows you to manage access to your database using Azure Active Directory identities. To configure TLS for Azure SQL Active Directory authentication, start by ensuring your client application supports TLS. Most modern applications and drivers support TLS by default, but it is essential to verify this. Next, you need to create an Azure Active Directory identity for your application. This can be done by registering your application in Azure Active Directory and granting it the necessary permissions to access your database. After creating your Azure Active Directory identity, you need to configure your Azure SQL database to use Active Directory authentication. This involves setting up an Azure Active Directory administrator for your database and granting the necessary permissions. To encrypt the connection to your database, you need to configure your client application to use TLS. This typically involves specifying the TLS version and cipher suite to use. It is recommended to use the latest version of TLS and a secure cipher suite. In addition to configuring your client application, you should also configure your Azure SQL database to enforce TLS encryption. This can be done by setting the minimum TLS version required for connections to your database. Best practices for configuring TLS for Azure SQL Active Directory authentication include using the latest version of TLS, specifying a secure cipher suite, and regularly reviewing and updating your TLS configuration to ensure it remains secure. In practical terms, configuring TLS for Azure SQL Active Directory authentication may involve updating your application code to use TLS or modifying your database configuration to enforce TLS encryption. For example, you may need to update your connection string to include the TLS version and cipher suite to use. In conclusion, configuring TLS for Azure SQL Active Directory authentication is a critical step in securing your database connections. By following the steps outlined in this guide and adhering to best practices, you can ensure your database connections are encrypted and secure.